What's up, guys? This is cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad. I'm a teacher here in Newworks, and today we're gonna go back to 2009 and talk about the chassis that was released that year. The chassis that is not so popular nowadays. My wife's first chassis, and probably as old as your skinny jeans and your purple shirt that I'm wearing right now. It is the Super XX chassis. Alright, so we're gonna go in depth with this chassis. We're gonna talk about the stats, we're gonna talk about the strengths and weaknesses, and we're gonna build it. Okay, so this chassis is not so popular nowadays, but some people are using it for modified class and some in pro stock class and all classes, but not a lot of people knows about this chassis because this is kind of like underrated in my opinion. But this is my wife's first chassis, so she gonna talk about the stats right now.
So the Super XX chassis is a mini 4-wheel drive chassis released by Tamiya in November of 2009. It debuted with the release of Max Breaker Black Special. The Super XX chassis is the improved version of the Super X chassis. While the front bumper itself remained unchanged, an additional front nose guard can be attached to widen the front bumper as well as provide frontal protection. The center parts and the side guards were strengthened, and in case of the side guards, additional attachment holes has been added. Instead of the 2 hardpoint rear stay, it comes with the newly designed 1 hardpoint rear stay with additional attachment holes. Much like its predecessor, the Super XX chassis allows easy access to the motor by removing the undermotor cover. The official regulations prohibit the use of pink or carbon helical crown gears with Super XX chassis. Overall, the Super XX has greater adaptability and more rigid than the Super X. Okay guys, so what you can see flashing on your screen right now is the Super XX chassis stats, which are divided into 6 categories: toughness, acceleration, cornering, stability, adaptability, and ease of maintenance. So let me remind you that the stats we'll be discussing right now is the stats of the chassis coming straight from the box. So that means when you haven't modified it yet. So for toughness, it's 4.5. Acceleration is 3.9, cornering is 3, stability 4.8, adaptability 3.9, and ease of maintenance 4. So now let's go back to cielshock.
So this is what the Super XX chassis look like right here. Alright, this is a purple one from my Violet edition. These are the parts, as you can see. Alright, as you can see, there's a lot of similarities with the Super X chassis. And, but it's an improved version. But let's go start building this so we can compare what are the similarities. And we're going to go to the technical info and the stats that Early said earlier. And we're going to go in depth. Alright, well, when I'm building a Super X chassis, I build the motor catch first. So you can see still the X-type terminals, same as the Super X, you can use for VS. So that would be easy. So that goes under here, which is one of the characteristics of the Super X and the Super XX that are the same. It's the one of the easiest chassis that you can put the motors besides AR and FMA. So it goes under there, and there's your motor lock over there, which is the same as the Super X, as I've said. Alright, so they improved this part too. This is the tail that's included with the kit. I'm gonna explain it more later as I build this. So you have to screw this one over here. This comes from the kit too, and there's a lock nut inside over there. Screw it over here. So that's your tail part. You have your traditional orange gears, see over there. One thing interesting is they're still using the 1.4 millimeter propeller shaft, still on the left side, on the right side rather, still on the right side, separated from the dish gear, because the dish gear is usually and the crown gears is usually together. But at this chassis, it's separated, just like the Super X. So not much difference from the Super X. You still have your 72mm wheel shaft over there. Of course, you still use your bushings and your eyelet. Don't forget that. I'm just gonna do this really quick so you guys can see. Again, the terminal is X type. The lock is still the same like the Super X. No difference. There you go, the terminal latch right here. So you can turn it on off. Oh, I forgot about the crown gears. Alright, the crown gears, it's still orange. Again, it's not allowed. Pink crown gears is not allowed on official Tamiya rules. I don't know about your other racing centers, but in official Tamiya rules, those are not allowed to use for Super XX. Alright. That's still 72mm wheel shaft. We're using small diameter wheels today. There you go. There's the lock. Here's the counter gear. Right here, it's the same traditional counter gear shaft with a notch right there. So it's still the traditional rear motor chassis. There's your gear latch and everything. This is one thing is interesting because the battery lock now, as you can see, there are two X's over there for Super XX. Alright, so now we built our Super XX, but last but not the least is we're gonna put this new part, which is the nose guard. Alright, the nose guard is kind of like an extension that goes right here. You can screw it over there too, but I prepare to screw it over here just to show you guys what it's gonna look like with the nose guard. That's the optional nose guard. Alright. So there you go. That's your Super XX chassis straight out from the box. Okay, so we're gonna go through the stats right now. The toughness is 4.5, which makes sense because if we're gonna compare this to the old Super X chassis, the old Super X chassis, the side part is not as tough as this. So this is very rigid, as you can see. Overall, the chassis is more rigid compared to the old Super XX on the side. And you can see the tail too is upgraded compared to the old tail, because the old tail have two attachment points over there, but now there's only one attachment point, but it's secured over there with those two pieces. So that's what made it more tougher. And obviously you have your bumper guard over there, for I think that's very helpful for the toughness of the chassis straight out from the box. And also the battery lock is more secure compared to the old Super X chassis. So 4.5, which is very, very high when it comes to toughness. So that means this car, you don't have to worry about the durability of this car because you already have 4.5 to begin with. Acceleration of this car is 3.9, which is kind of a little bit low when you think about the stats nowadays. But 3.9 accelerates fast, which makes sense because you can change the gear ratios, especially if you have a small diameter wheel like this. Small diameter wheel kits like Max, I think Knuckle Breaker have a small diameter wheels, and Phantom Blade, Max Shadow Breaker. That makes sense when it comes to acceleration. That's why it's 3.9, especially in straights. This car will be fast in straights because a lot of kits have wide tires. You know, in drag racing, the wider the tire is, the more grip, and it's fast to straight. Okay, for straightaways. Okay, cornering is 3, which is very low, in my opinion, which makes sense because putting this nose guards makes the car a little bit more wider, and the chassis is wide to begin with because the width of the chassis is 98 millimeters. The length of the chassis is 153 millimeters from here to here. So that's the length. That makes sense. It's fastened straight. And the width is 98. So that's very wide. That means the cornering speed suffers because it have a lot of travel time to turn. And, you know, wide stance, the wider it is, the more stable it is. But it's slower when it comes to cornering. Stability is 4.8, which is I think is very high compared to other chassis straight out from the box. Again, it makes sense because it's wide, so it pretty much sacrificed its speed for stability. So this car is stable straight out from the box. And as far as I know, most of the kits, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as far as I know, the kits with Super X or Super XX chassis have those 14 millimeter rollers with O-ring. So that's what makes the car stable, the roller settings and how wide it is. So how wide the car is. So the wider the car, the cornering speed suffers, but it's more stable. So as you look at the chassis, it's very, very wide, straight out from the box. Adaptability is 3.9, which is an upgrade compared to the Super X. 3.9, which makes sense because they added these holes for adaptability. They added those holes. They added a nose guard, which is more holes for adaptability for upgraded parts, and also the tail have more holes too for adaptability. So that makes sense that this car straight out from the box got more adaptability, which you can maximize that on super stock races and pro stock races in the Philippines, especially in the Philippines when stock racing is very big. Ease of maintenance is 4. In my opinion, it could be higher, but from Tamiya it says 4 because it's very, very easy to maintain. The motor can be removed just like that. Everything is just basically very easy to snap on. Like, that is very easy. Like, you just click it over there. There's those two parts, and then there you go. You know, everything is just basically snap on. See? That's why maintenance and cleaning is very easy for my opinion. Especially removing the motor under there. There's a little bit downfall because they said when it gets loose, the motor most likely skip or the gear skips or jump off. But there are some ways to minimize that or prevent that to happen. Yeah, that's the most likely it for the Super XX chassis. The drive shaft length is 72 millimeters. So that's 72 millimeters for the travel. The drive shaft over there. Compatibility of the gear is from 551, 421, 41, 371, or 351. So Super XX chassis, like Super X chassis, it's the same. You can use any gear that you want from low gear to highest gear ratio because you don't need a special cover for it. It's just basically, it can adapt whatever gear ratio you want to use. So that one is 4-1. You can switch it up to 4-2-1. And if you change the gear, you can change it to 3-7-1 or 3-5-1, which is very, very nice for a chassis that you can switch it up. The roller down truss, which is important when it comes to stock racing. The roller down truss over here, right there. So you guys can see that. The angle going down is 6.5, which is high enough, especially on Philippine stock racing. That's important because you can't do any modification for down truss or roller down truss or angle. That's 6.5. You gotta remember, guys, that's 6.5 to begin with. That is very, very high. That, again, makes sense when it comes to the car stability straight out from the box. That's why the stability of the car is 4.8. What else? The terminal is X-type, obviously. The batteries, the weight of this car, the chassis, with batteries is 119 grams, which is heavy. Without the batteries is 70 grams. So the chassis is a little bit heavy to begin with when you think about it. And the ground clearance with the large diameter wheels is 5.2. So this will be high to the ground with a 5.2 ground clearance if you have a large diameter wheel. And now that we have the small diameter wheel, it's 1.5 millimeters above from the ground. 1.9, I mean. So that's only 1 millimeter and 0.9 above from the ground. We'll take a look. There you go. That's 1.9 above from the ground with a small diameter. So when they say 1.9, not just the bumper, it's like the overall car. So you can see that gap over there. That's 1.9. So it's pretty lowered. You know, it's pretty lowered. So that also makes sense when it comes to stability if you have a small diameter wheels. So yeah, that's about it for the Super XX chassis. For me, it's an upgrade from a Super X. And it's kind of underrated because not a lot of people are using it. But you can always compensate all the weakness of this chassis for. I think the most weakness of this chassis is acceleration. So if that was me, if I'm using this for modified class or Tamiya class or speed tech class, I will float the transmission if it's allowed. I will float the gear. I will use the highest gear ratio. And now, you know, the weakness of this chassis is basically just all speed. So the toughness, I don't have to worry. Acceleration, so that's pretty much all transmission. And then it's heavy, so I basically gotta cut that part, cut it, make it lighter. And you already have a stable car because it's wide. The chassis is wide. As you can see, if you take a look, the chassis is really wide. So you don't have to widen your tires or whatever. Oh, I will use an offset tire to have less drag if I'm going to use it for modified races. But I will make my rollers as smooth as possible and use a powerful motor because the toughness of this car, it can tolerate a high motor. So this is for me, this is the least used chassis nowadays, but I built one of these and this is amazing on my experience. It's just basically trying to figure it out which one you're going to compensate. So again, as I've said, it's the acceleration and cornering speed for me. So what you're going to do is like cut it to bumperless and make it closer to the body as close as possible, shorten the car to be fast in cornering, make it light, put a higher motor, you know, and then it's ready to go. I think there's a lot of work. It's kind of southpaw way because, you know, Super 2 and VS is fast to begin with. But once you master this chassis and you learn its strengths and weaknesses, I think this car will be very, very competitive when it comes to this chassis. Rather, it's very, very competitive when it comes to modified class and other classes. But yeah, so if you like this video, please hit like, subscribe, hit that bell button so every time I make a video you get notified. And this is Cielshock. As I always say, you learn from us, we learn from you. Always raise humble. Peace. Super XX.